How's it going, folks? Welcome to FoundFlix. On this Ending Explained, we're looking at Malum, following a rookie officer who willingly takes the last shift at a newly decommissioned police station in an attempt to uncover the mysterious connection between her father's death and a vicious cult. If that plot sounds familiar, it's because this is a remake or reimagining, I guess, of The Last Shift from almost 10 years ago. Now, you might think it must be coming from a different creative team from before, but nope, it's the exact same crew behind it. And that's actually what intrigued me most about Malum. Why redo your own movie? Of course, on the surface level, Malum is bigger in scope and budget than in its original form, with a much higher quality production and look overall. A lot of it feels like The Last Shift, but ratcheted up a level. Overall, the same, but bigger. It also has a ton more practical effects and gore, and that is always welcome. So that's all on the surface level, but then there's the story itself. As I was watching, I would always be curious the reasoning behind the various creative choices. Although there are some changes that have a major impact, especially when it comes to the ending, which makes things a lot more spelled out than the subtle story of its predecessor. Is it better? Again, hard to say. So let's check out Malum, breaking down the story, including the major changes from Last Shift, as well as explaining the quite different ending. We hear a group singing a hopeful hymn in unison, and get to see some secret police footage of just what the weirdo Malum family is all about. A tape groans on to a fanciful mishmash of various objects cobbled together into something resembling a throne. Several girls are there seen frolicking around in the water. One amongst them looks a bit haunted and smirks dementedly at the camera. They escort the rest of the girls away from the water and sit them down in a line. Later that night, a flashlight streaks around the dark surroundings of a barn. The girls have bags placed over their heads, now getting much more freaked out. The three cult girls push her down and applaud in delight. There's another guy there looking on, and he is pretty stoked about everything. He says in a glitched voice, "We pray in the temple of the low god." Flashes blip by of all kinds of other strange as well as horrifyingly gory sights. After the family compound has been raided, the cop responsible for it, Will, is looking out of sorts. The other officers check on him, and he shrugs off that he's fine. In his locker, he finds a paper declaring him a hero cop for his work saving 3 girls in the raid. The others all congratulate him, and down at the bottom, the picture of their leader John is oddly burned out. Will isn't feeling so heroic, crumpling up the paper and lamenting that he could have saved another girl if he had called it in sooner. Mustache interjects that he did stop him and suggests to just take the win whenever he can. In the jail's hallways, there is somebody whistling that same Malum lullaby. Will comes to an open cell door and blankly enters as though in a trance. Down at the shooting range, 2 cops discuss their date, which went awry thanks to too much booze, only to get blown to smithereens out of nowhere by Cap. There's lots of loud clamoring after, and word of an officer down. The whole force descends upon the cop, who looks absolutely demented now. He croaks, "To tell my family I love them. They are safe in the arms of my master," he says, followed by another shot. 1 year after the massacre, his daughter Jessica is following in his footsteps, preparing for her first shift as a police officer. To keep her cool, she starts reciting from the officer's handbook, protect the innocent and all that crap. She visits Will's grave, admitting that she never thought that she'd be a cop, but feels surprisingly comfortable in the uniform. She tells him goodbye, leaving a little toy down on his gravestone. She gets a surprise visit from her crazed, drunken mother, Diane, annoyed that her daughter won't answer her calls. She remembers those damn toys were the bane of her existence when he was alive, but now she finds she can't let any of them go. Diane attempts to talk to her. She doesn't know what really happened there. This must come up a lot, as Jess fires back, "You always say that, but you never actually tell me what went down that night." The same goes for now, and we understand this is the real motivation behind her job, to somehow hopefully find out the truth about her dad and that fateful night. Jess truly believes that her mom doesn't really care about Will. He was everything that you're not. Diane scoffs in return, "That's right, I'm not a killer," and Jess reaches her limit, leaving annoyed. As she walks off, we see that the Malum symbol has been scrawled on the back of Will's headstone. They are in fact scattered all over the area, seeing them on buildings and various things all around the town. There's really not much going on in the mostly empty streets until Jess passes by the new police station, seeing a bunch of kids sitting out on the steps up to no good. Distracted, she bumps right into another girl, cackling to "Watch it, piggy," and launches something at her hood. The one guy that is getting arrested spits up blood with a big toothy grin to her, along with the other girls, all working in memory of the Malum family. Where she is doing her first day on the job is none other than the exact same abandoned old station where her dad went nuts. Well, that's kind of creepy. It's even more so inside, looking like it has essentially been abandoned since that night. After a lengthy search through the hallways, a basketball bounces down the way, and she encounters another soul, Officer Cohen. He's a bit bristly when she tries to introduce herself, telling her to walk away. She starts to do so, and he's like, "No, no, No, don't leave, just walk slowly. She mentions the kids at the news station, and Cohen knows all about them. Even a year after they got John, some of his crew managed to escape charges. Thusly, on the anniversary, they are having a temper tantrum of sorts, busing in people to town from all over the place. He fills her in on her limited duties. It should be pretty quiet around here, but he leaves her the number for the news station, along with begrudgingly his personal number. Cohen is confused why she would even want this gig, and she reveals who her father was. The cop implies in that case she must be as fucked in the head as he was. She counters that he was a great man, but he begs to differ. He killed all of his friends with a shotgun. Well, hard to argue with that. She puts her foot down. She's just here to do a job. Is that alright with you? He fills her in that all she has to do is man the phone line, and make absolutely sure not to go into the holding area. Okay? Well, so far things are strikingly similar to the setup of last shift, with one seemingly minor difference. In the other version, Cohen mentions that there is a biotech crew coming in later that night for some specific evidence, but not this time. This means that the ending will definitely be different from its predecessor. Jess tours around the dark and decrepit facility, and it's not long before strange events start occurring. Rummaging through the desk drawers, the elevator bell dings and it clunks to arrival, yet the doors never open. She navigates to the locker room in search of her father's and finds that it's locked, literally the only one of the entire bunch. Cohen's bouncing ball is back, leading her to another pitch black room. Looking all the way across the room, a dark figure is definitely standing there. She rushes to flip the lights on and they disappear. An alarm starts ringing due to a scraggly looking dude appearing at the front door. He rants cryptically about his missing baby girl. He's looked everywhere for her. She offers to call a shelter, and he silently relieves himself on the door to her annoyance. She cleans up with a mop and bucket, also finding a bolt cutter that could come in handy for that pesky lock. She tries to pop it off, but somehow it won't cut. She tries an extinguisher as well with no luck. She'll have to put that on hold as a call is coming in. It's a woman squealing like a pig and saying, "Hello, little piggy." Jess hangs up and they call right back. The little piggy went down to the market and she was slaughtered, they say. Jess shuts her down. It's a crime to prank the emergency lines. The lady isn't exactly bothered, snorting that the piggies died just like the ones at the station. This piques Jess's interest, asking the lady's name, and now it's her turn to hang up. She calls the other station to attempt to trace the call, but as soon as mentioning her name, the dispatcher turns cold and dismisses it as not a real priority. She returns to the locker and a bullet manages to break the lock. It's pretty empty inside, stands that same crumpled article. Also stuffed in the back is a photo of Will and Jess when she was younger. Then she spots that one corner is raised and discovers a box hidden underneath. Within is a treasure trove of articles and evidence regarding the Malum cult as well as their various kidnappings. They call themselves the Flock of the Low God, and their murders have been dated going all the way back to at least the 90s. The murders were done under the guise of being ritualistic, seeing that same barn from the opening. We see one girl that was killed by the cult, Betty, was fed to their pigs. Just appropriately then hears a pig snorting somewhere and checks the cams, indeed spotting a big hogger right outside. She calls the dispatcher about it and he's not too bothered, especially as they're dealing with all these cult members all over town now. Jess goes to see for herself, and as the coast appears to be clear, she unlocks the doors. The Malum symbol has also been drawn in blood on its back, and it has a name tag Betty, the same as the girl who was eaten. Must be named after her. Thanks for that tribute. She drags it inside, putting it in a cell with some water, and that's at least sorted for now. However, there's already more strangeness, hearing clattering somewhere nearby. She attempts to call in about a possible B&E, only getting static in response. She follows more noises, coming to Nate throwing stuff all over the place. He clutches a bag of evidence containing his daughter's bloody shoe. He cries that he can't remember and bops himself in the face with it. Jess holsters her gun, opting instead for a taser. Nate rushes her, getting zapped in the tummy. She gets him to roll over, again seeing someone distinctly there in the doorframe. She gets him cuffed, escorting him to the dreaded holding area. It's dark as hell back here too, also seeing a strange growth of mold that has overtaken the ceiling. Nate stops right at the threshold and starts freaking out about his daughter again. "She's here!" he cries. She is forced to drag him the rest of the way into the cell. The door starts automatically swinging closed and she just misses it. Jess calms herself and radios for assistance, but that's no help as usual. A voice whispers, "Still here," and it crackles over the radio. Nate goes nuts again, pounding at the door to let him out, and Jess drops her flashlight. She crawls around in the dark to find it, but Nate gets to it first. She calmly asks him to return it, grumbling that she doesn't want to kill someone on her very first day. The light keeps panning around the room and settles on Nate, meaning there's someone or something else in the room with them. The voice asks her to stay here, calling her by her name, chilling Jess to the bone. She seems to recognize the voice as her dad's and retrieves a flashlight. Turning it on the corner, there's no one there besides Nate, until a gaggle of bodies drop down from the ceiling feeling, sending her rushing outside. Wait, I thought the door was closed and locked. Huh? Interesting. To calm her increasingly frazzled nerves, she starts chanting the police handbook to herself. She tries the other station but gets no answer, forcing her to call the crabby Cohen. He picks up right away and is as gruff as expected. She wants to know what he was yelling at when she first showed up. Did he see something strange too? He assumes that she must have gone into the holding area, and she defended that she had no choice. He explains the very real problem plaguing the area. Black mold has taken over, and that shit is toxic. It even makes you hallucinate, calling into question everything that we see. Are you just all messed up on mold? Jess says that she was seeing things before then, and he barks for her to stay out of it. He lays it out plainly. Are you gonna be a baby, or are you gonna do your job? She agrees to the latter, and he's glad to hear it as long as she doesn't bother him again. Well, looks like you are on your own, Jess. She cleans up all of her papa's evidence, finding an alarming drawing, including that ever-present symbol, amongst several depictions of death. There's also some Polaroids featuring a statue of the entity known as the Temple Baron, a pre-biblical demonic entity. With another drawing of the symbol, she confirms that it is indeed the same one from the pig's back. I mean, obviously. Underneath everything is an unmarked flash drive that will no doubt add more layers to this increasingly complex case. She ventures outside to her squad car to fetch a laptop. There she oversees a guy tossing a lady coldly out of his car and driving off. Seeing that she's been beaten up, Jess invites her inside to tend to her wounds. Marigold, the only actor to reprise the role from the original, perhaps due to being married to the director, is surprised by Jess's compassion. It must be her first day, saying that no seasoned cop would be this nice. As she details her work turning tricks, it sounds like she enacts some vengeance of her own, taking out the bad guys that go after kids at truck stops. Yet she doesn't actually say this when pressed by what she means exactly. She stares off into space, and Jess literally snaps her back to reality. She's surprised to learn that Jess is here all by her lonesome after what happened. Jess assumes that she's referring to the officers, but Marigold corrects, no, not them, but the mountain flock. It turns out that she was in the cell right next to the group that night and overheard them bragging about killing that girl, the same night that they all perished mysteriously. Jess is confused. Weren't they killed in the raid? But as she points out, Jess didn't actually see what happened. She did. She details that they had pillowcases over their heads and there was blood all over the walls. And once more, she goes distant, getting wide-eyed. Jess turns back, seeing nothing there. She asks what she saw, and Marigold is clearly disturbed. I'm not gonna say anymore, she stammers. She starts chanting the group's credo and gets more and more animated, tears streaming down her face. She starts shrieking out of nowhere and then seems to regain herself, chuckling, oh, I just drifted off there for a moment. Hell, like, yeah, I was a little more than a drifting off. Jess is tired of dealing with her, growling for her to get out of here already. As soon as she leaves, she gets another call from the lady calling her little piggy. She keeps hanging up, but they are unrelenting, threatening if she hangs up once more, they will kill this girl. What girl? Jess inquires, and it sounds like they have taken new former hostages, mentioning Monica Matthews, one of the girls that her father had rescued. Jess wants to know what they want, and she tells her that it's not her, but John's desires. She points out that he's dead, and the lady cryptically replies, he is the dead baby. By the way, I did not notice the ghost back there briefly behind her, and technically this is who she is talking to. We'll get to that later. Her daddy started something, but tonight they're going to finish it, followed by more anguish screams. She dials the other station, explaining that they've taken Monica again, and after further discussion, realizes that the mystery caller knows her identity somehow. As suspected, the other two girls that Will rescued both went missing tonight as well. He offers to look into where the call is coming from, urging for her to stay close. Jess pops a stick in, finding several video clips of the cult. We see their makeshift throne, and a lady with an eye patch is filming. They have other girls already held captive, while one of the flock rants that her body will rot, but her spirit will feed the demon and make it strong for the journey. Well, that's good. Another girl cackles. The word is she's gonna be queen. The prisoner tries to play along, desperately saying, oh, I can hear the voices too. They aren't convinced, and one girl disturbingly beats her to death. Showing no remorse, she smirks at the mangled pile of meat afterwards. She doesn't even look like people anymore. The violence causes Jess to back away from the computer. Diane then calls, rambling that she was a good mother when it mattered most, and the footage resumes on its own. Diane gets disturbed hearing the lullaby in the background, demanding that she turn the tape off immediately. Jess clicks away, but the clip continues regardless. One girl turns right to the lens, muttering Jessica's name. Well, it's not a normal tape, is it? The angle changes to one directly behind her right now at the desk. On screen, Jess rises to her feet and smashes the evidence box to the floor. Jess peers over, and it is indeed somehow on the ground. She unfolds a shooting range target practice sheet with "still here" written in blood on it. Thusly, she heads there for more clues, finding a story regarding her father's death taped to a bust. The gallery machine creaks to life, flinging targets down the range. Another is launched featuring the symbol, stopping right in front of her. She yanks it down, revealing a monstrous version of the crew, the bags now grotesquely fused to their heads. Jess. Jess flees and another grabs at her leg. She makes it to the front door, unfortunately finding it chained up from the outside. A voice comes over her radio telling her to not go. It's still here, seeing a brief reflection of Will. There's a demonic growl and she finds the back door is locked up too. She frantically calls the other station and he assures her that they'll send over a unit with bolt cutters immediately. And Jess has to know, how did John die at the station? He doesn't understand the semantics. He's dead either way. Jess breaks down that she can't do this and turns into a blubbering mess. The dispatcher expresses support and relays just how much they actually need her right now. There's 3 missing girls out there and she can help. As he points out, the only people out there that think her dad is not a piece of shit are those 3 girls and their families. If she gives up, that could be completely unraveled. He has also learned that the call is coming from a burner phone. No location yet, and it might take some time. The culties are continuing to escalate things, now causing fires all over the city. She hangs up and is back to chanting the code in a half-hearted attempt to keep her marbles intact. Now there's a lot of question about what is reality or not, especially as things go on, but this next moment leans us much more towards the supernatural. Feedback screeches over the PA system, and we focus in on the switchboard. It comes to life, and suddenly a call comes through from the cult. As is often the case, spirits can communicate through electricity. It really feels like that's what they're implying here. The lullaby takes over the loudspeakers, the elevator starts whirring, and Jess gets her piece at the ready. The elevator arrives, yet the doors remain closed. Breaking the tension, Cohen's basketball comes flying in, bouncing off the doors. On the monitor, it changes to footage of her dad taking Malum and his crew under arrest. They each spew a bunch of culty nonsense in a very major way inspired by Manson and his female cronies. The overall gist is that according to them, Will also has his own small yet vital part in their master plan. We haven't seen that yet. John proposes that Jesus and Satan in the traditional sense are just fictions of the church. He does have a devil on his shoulder, just not the one that he might expect. Will then rises up as though seeing something absolutely baffling. John informs him that it was his mother that wrote their catchy theme lullaby, and now the low lord of which they sing has come for him. Will runs out of the room in quite a hurry, but we don't see what he does. Jess continues digging through the footage and finds another angle of the interview. Clear as day, there is some kind of horrific entity watching from behind the glass, the low god that John was referring to in the flesh. A bag is thrown over Jess's head and she is taken away on the gurney. She is brought to 3 others, the 2 girls along with John's body, all bearing the Malum symbol on their bloody sheets. And the bodies start to violently writhe, flipping Jess out. Just as suddenly, they go limp and she screeches for help. A coroner comes in, but is quickly dispatched by more pillowcase-wearing cult members. They retrieve their pals' bodies and wheel out the gurneys. Jess gets the bag unzipped, coming face to face with another bloody creature. She tumbles back on the floor, and once more everything is seemingly back to normal. There's even some fresh hope in the form of Hudson and Price here to lend a hand. They say they're here to pick up the bearded fella, then after a round of rock, paper, scissors, Hudson is forced to go, despite being afraid of the haunted holding cells. Price is left behind, who, as you remember, chatted with her dad on the night of the massacre. He thinks it is kind of messed up that she is even here considering everything. She insists that she wanted to be here and that her father is a hero. Price agrees that he was, until, he wasn't. She wants to know once and for all what really went down that day, which he attempts to skirt around, and he finally admits that he actually feels responsible in some way. He could see that he wasn't acting right but didn't tell the chief. Will was watching that interview with John's tape that we saw over and over, believing that he saw something in it. Well, we saw that too. The day before what happened, he told him not to go into holding. Malum is still there. He has something relevant to show her, her father's murder weapon tucked away behind a filing cabinet. When he goes to replace it, his face appears blown away. Her dad is there and pops a shot as though we are reliving that night. Most certainly Price was one of the victims of Will's, and we've actually been seeing a spirit this whole time, as well as everyone else we've been seeing, I would assume. She's brought back in time to Malum's barn, seeing him there preaching to his followers about bringing forth the low god, as usual, the king of torment and infinite evil. That whole thing. Infinite evil. It's a lot of evil. Holding a baby, he wipes some blood on it to baptize her in evil. He informs her that she is no longer bound to this flesh, but to another. You are one of us, he yells to the confused, crying child. She hands the baby to a young woman who calls her Jessica, now coming to understand there is a much bigger plan in play here than we could have expected. She's been destined to something since she was born. Nate screams to be let out, which brings her back to the station. Nate speaks more on the ritual. She must summon power, participate for the greater purpose, but before continuing, we see Hudson in there with a gun trained on him. She hurries to get the door open and the guy scampers off. He happens upon another room and a girl's voice teases that she's in here. He opens the door to ghostly moans and steps into the dark. Jess attempts to call her mom, and the footage glitches to another shot of her with her crying child, cooing, "It's all right, little Jessica." She really lays out in black and white the whole whole shocking situation here. Diane informs little Jess that one day her daddy is gonna find them. He doesn't know it yet, but he's gonna become a police officer. When he gets here, as in the raid, he will beat John to a pulp but stop himself because he's a good man. After the revelation, she stares right into the lens at her daughter in the future. She reaches her hand out and Jess follows suit. The tender moment through time is spoiled by a visit from the now disfigured yellow dress lady. She shrieks, chasing Jess into another room. It's still somewhere in here, and there's nowhere else to go. She nearly gets away until backing into a light which draws his attention. She lets off a shot, and it appears that she actually hit the pig in reality. No monster here. The alarm begins ringing, and this time it's her mom waiting at the front doors. She demands to open up, also noticing the chains are lying on the ground, meaning they were never cut or probably were never even on the door in the first place. The point is, you can't trust anything about the reality being presented here, as it's all obviously being distorted by all the vengeful Malum spirits. She scowls that her mother is a liar. She's one of them. The jig is up, and Diane spills that they left her father when she was still pregnant. Somehow, John found her out of nowhere, proclaiming the baby was going to be part of something big, which Diane, for some reason, blindly believed. However, after she was born, she thought it was a mistake and took Jessica and fled. Everything was fine until a year ago, when John managed to track them down. Perhaps even stranger, John hadn't aged a day after all those years. Will put a stop to him via the raid, but John had other plans. He always does. On cue, Will's spirit wanders by, distracting Diane. Voices whisper for her, stumbling up to that same toy of her father's from the graveyard. An unearthly shriek sends Jess back into the halls, ordering her mom to lock up and stay put. She enters the gym, coming to the one-eyed culty with another hostage. Jess inquires about the other girl, and she is annoyed. It's your big night, and that's all you have to say? She fibs that backup is on their way, and she knows better. Jess is all by herself here. She wants to know what it is that she wants, but she corrects once more. This is about what he wants. John, of course, and he wants you. Yeah, I think those flashbacks made that pretty obvious. She taunts him, well, I'm right here, come and get me. She tells her to be patient, learning that their demon god has been whispering in her mom's belly even before she was born. Almost like a preordained ritual kind of thing. Bring forth the Evo. The lady laments that she thought she was supposed to be queen, but knows her own purpose, to give her a message. She repeats what Nate started earlier regarding each of the steps of the ritual. You gotta have power, and the way to get it is spilling blood. An animal gives you a little bit of power, but humans give you way more. Speaking to this, the girl executes her captive, and Jess takes her down immediately after. Well, now we do got some real blood spilling. Pigs count too, remember? From the dark, a horde of pillowcase maniacs rush at her. She makes it back to the now dark office, and there's no sign of Diane. The dispatcher calls her for a change, warning that the flock is planning a raid on the old station, and she's like, they're already here, Dumbo! Although, as we've already come to expect at this point, things aren't what they seem. The caller mentions her mom being there, but how would he know that? They drop the facade. It's Malum himself. He's kept tabs on Diane this whole time, and as he told Will last year in the tape, he would be back for his daughter. A vessel must be chosen by its passenger. He was chosen when he was a boy, and tonight the low god finally comes. Hooray! Right? A lumbering figure passes behind her, Nate dragging a bloody stump scraping along the ground. Piggy got him pretty good. Jess follows a long trail of blood. Nate lets out a demonic growl and goes for her, Jess firing in return. The rest of the group are about to bust their way in, screaming insanely. She tries her radio for some reason, and then her usual police code for solace. It doesn't work this time, and she gets the strength to continue through the insanity. She approaches the door and blows another one away, hearing the low god lullaby echoing in the halls. The other cops, as ghouls, taunt her about her super cop dad saving the day with a laugh. Then there's another pillow bandit lording over a girl with a blade. He manages to slash her throat before she can get to him first. Jess does her best to save the dying girl, but she quickly bleeds out. A noise draws her attention, seeing her dad passing by. In the locker room, hidden in shadow, he accuses that she doesn't belong in a uniform. She just wanted to know what happened and why you hurt all those people. He corrects, he didn't hurt anyone, he killed them. Well, he did hurt Diane and me, she points out. He excuses that he's a cop, it's what we do. We kill people when we have to. And on that day, he growls, his eyes starting to glow, I had to. Another baghead shoots and Will vanishes. She comes to another victim, Anna, dangling by a noose flanked with a symbol. Jess tries to get her free, but the rope continues tightening until it completely decapitates her, showering Jess in blood. The voices of the flock surround her, beckoning her to come and find us, pretty pig. Looking determined to end this, Jess first goes back for her father's massacre machine. Put her in the chair, the voices call out, tonight he finally comes. She makes her way downstairs, coming to someone covered in blood, muttering more about the oppressive prophecy. It takes a long time to say that, yeah, it's pretty much going to plan. They point her to another room where she finds someone seated on the Malum throne. She removes the pillowcase, revealing a demonic-looking incarnation of John. With fangs, Jess tries to to back away, but is stopped by all the others, members of the flock along with their victims. They part ways, revealing yellow glowing eyes in the void. The temple baron growls and the people chant together, "The spirit will feed the demon." The big thing steps out and kind of looks like the symbol, but tall. I'm not sure how well this big reveal plays off. A little silly. As you would do when encountering a demonic entity, Jess opens fire and it continues towards her unaffected. She fires again and it shrieks along with John. Its face then flies right off and lands right on hers. Well, looks like you're part of the Malum crew now. Back in the station, the flock are popping out of every room and corner almost like Scooby-Doo style. They're like, bam, bam, bam. How many freaking hallways do they got in this building? Good lord. The voice is pleased that the temple has brought him forth, the king of torment, but he chose you for something greater. The low god sent John to find her before she even existed. It's her destiny to be his queen of endless dawn. She bumps into another faceless person, John I think. She shoots and they fall back to their knees. The lights go back to normal and see that it was actually her mom, another classic Malum bait and switch. Got you real good this time. It is also kind of funny how she never questions this happening over and over. Like, maybe I ought to take a moment. It's been kind of a weird night. Things aren't exactly been going normal. Ah well, by the same token, presumably all the other people we've seen tonight are in fact spirits, not real people. Again, hard to say for sure when it comes to reality around here, but we do know her mom is alive at least, plus it's spilling her blood that officially completes the ritual. Again, maybe the pig was real too. That kind of has to be the case because it wouldn't make much sense otherwise. Back to the interrogation tape, John clarifies as much. The world is a game, and gains must be made on the board. They must bear fruit. Just as he has pawns, so does John. He promises that no matter how much he tries to stay away, in the end, he will capture his queen. As for what that means exactly, completing the ritual will strip the veil and call upon the others. Mark my words, he finishes with a grin. Sounds like bringing forth the end times kind of thing. I can't imagine the low god's friends are very nice people. In our final moment, Jess comes to and takes her unwitting new place alongside John as his unholy queen, working in the service of the low god's evil plan for eternity. Well, probably. Well, as we see, it's pretty obvious how things turn out. Malum was able to complete his quite complicated ritual to make Jess his demon bride. She did exactly what she was supposed to do for things to turn out this way. As we learned, she was predestined even before birth for her role. So something like that would be pretty hard to escape, I'd wager. We see throughout how Malum works by twisting reality to push his pawns into where he wants them. Starting with her dad, it was after seeing the low god and Malum whisper to him that he broke from reality, leading to the massacre. It's almost the exact same thing that his daughter goes through a year later. Malum twists her mind throughout the night until she is tricked into spilling her mother's blood, completing the ritual. Again, that Malum guy is definitely good at his job. She didn't even really stand a chance. This Queen of Evil slant is probably the biggest addition to Malum over the last shift. That didn't really have anything like that at all. Jess was still tricked into spilling blood, but it was played quite differently. She took out a bunch of what she thought were members of the flock, but the reality was they were the aforementioned biotech crew. This still completed the ritual there of bringing John back, and it was on this moment of revelation for Jess that the story ends. Malum really goes a lot bigger than the original, and I'm not quite sure it was necessarily for the best. With that, we've reached the conclusion of this ending explained for Malum. But don't forget, before we go, you can send me requests for any movies or TV shows you'd like to see me explain by sending them my way on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. What did you think of Malum and its ending? Do you prefer this or Last Shift? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.